There's a lot of things happening in the oil markets, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what the markets believe and how they react. I'm Sean Pruitt, president of Kingdom Exploration. We've got a lot of news to cover. All eyes are on this next OPEC meeting, June 4th, I believe. And everyone has their thoughts. Many analysts believe that Saudi Arabia and Russia are not seeing eye to eye. Many believe that we are going to see no change in the OPEC policy to reduce or to increase oil production, but they're going to keep a close eye on the oil market. In the event that they can't get oil prices above 80, they're going to come in and rescue the markets. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what you believe about it. And when I say what you believe, I'm talking about all the buyers and sellers longing and shorting oil contracts and what have you. Okay. And so I'm going to cover some news and tell you what I think about what China is doing in the background, what I expect about the Saudi-Russian relationship, and so on and so forth. WTI screams back up past 70 despite crude inventory builds. Right now, WTI crude 70.74, Brent crude $76 a barrel. To put simply, the reason why oil prices are going up is because the debt ceiling issue in Congress has been taken care of. I mean, what else are they going to think of? I mean, we had a pandemic, and the news industry, they all said we're going to see a reduction in oil demand by 30%. Oil prices crashed. And then you had Saudi Arabia and Russia flooding the market, trying to break the backs of shale, and that caused oil prices to drop. And then you had all of the recession fears, and then you had the banking crisis, and then now you have the debt ceiling issue. I mean, what are they going to think of next? Because, I mean, here's it, to put simply, the left, their campaign was, we're going to shut down oil, we're going to replace it with green energy, and and now they're trying to fulfill these campaign promises, but embarrassingly, they haven't been able to reduce oil demand. All the while, oil demand is growing. They're spending trillions and trillions of dollars on green energy, and green energy is not up to snuff. It was a complete failure, but nobody's reporting that. Nobody's saying, hey, green energy is a complete failure. Oil demand is growing. Oil is here to stay. Nobody's going to replace fossil fuels. It's impossible. Yes, we're increasing solar power panels. Yes, we are increasing wind power. We're increasing electric cars. We are enhancing the grid to prepare for the coming green energy wave. Yes, they're spending trillions of dollars. Yes, they're making headway on these things, but it is a drop in the bucket in comparison to a fossil fuel built world. In all of these other emerging markets, in these other countries, in Africa, in the Middle East, all these countries are going to use the cheapest energy, and that is fossil fuels. Fossil fuels remains the cheapest and most abundant, reliable energy out there. Green energy is not abundant. In order for it to be abundant, we have to build more solar power panels. We have to build more wind turbines. We have to upgrade our infrastructure. If the richest country in the world that has a printing press that could print trillions and trillions of dollars can't get it done, what makes you think Africa or Germany or Europe, all these other countries, what do you think they are going to do? They're going to go after the cheapest, readily available energy, and that's fossil fuels. That is crude oil. And the jet fuel, the demand for jet fuel is increasing. The demand for gasoline is increasing. The demand, the refinery runs. The refineries buy the crude, the raw crude, and they convert it to things that we could use. They convert it to the oil that you put in your engine in your car. They convert it to gasoline that you put in your car. They convert it to jet fuel that you put in airplanes. They convert it to diesel that goes into big semi-trucks and big work trucks. They are increasing their refinery runs. And the world is hearing a different message from the left. They have weaponized the media to go against fossil fuels and to be pro-green. It's that simple, guys. Now, Saudi Arabia and Russia and OPEC, they are trying to sound the alarm bells like, look, we're not going to have enough oil for tomorrow. And here's the deal. The whole point of Saudi Arabia and Russia flooding the markets with oil, if you don't recall that, during the pandemic, they flooded the markets with oil because they saw that shale oil and gas, U.S. oil production, the most predominant oil that we are producing in America comes from shale. Shale is a tight rock, and it's the most expensive barrel of oil to produce, where Russia, Saudi Arabia, the rest of the world, most of their oil is conventional oil coming out of formations that are more consistent and are cheaper to produce. We can't compete with Saudi Arabia. We can't compete with Russia. So what do? They flooded the markets with oil, breaking the backs of U.S. shale. And so shale has been trying to come back. The UAE in the world is saying, oh, shale is going to come back. They're going to increase their output. Well, when Putin invaded Ukraine, they thought, what an excellent opportunity to increase our development in oil and gas. The U.S. companies increased rigs by 150 rigs. And then all of a sudden, oil prices, they went up and then they dropped back down to pre-Ukraine invasion. And they got caught holding the bag once again. In 2012, they spent billions and billions of dollars. We went from 6 million barrel a day output in the U.S., and we peaked at 13.2 million barrels a day. And they're baby drill, but they caused a glut in oil. We had too much oil, and oil prices dropped down to $50-something a barrel. Shale is the most expensive barrel of oil to produce. All the shale companies lost money. Exxon, Chevron, Shale, all these U.S. oil companies, they lost big time. And then they're pushing the whole idea that, well, we're doing capital, we're reducing the amount of capital by capital discipline, and we want to give more dividends to our investors. And they're using all these excuses of the difficulty of getting more rigs, the difficulty of manpower because of what's happened with COVID, material issues, all of these issues. They're blaming everything else except for the fact that shale is not that profitable. So they took another stab at it. When Putin invaded Ukraine, they took another stab. We increased the rig count by 150 rigs, and they went back at it, and then they lost their butts again. And so shale is on the decline, guys. It's not profitable, not in comparison to conventional oil. Conventional oil might cost you $250,000 to $1 million per well, as where a shale well costs $5, $10, $20 million to develop. And their decline is rapid. It's 40% a year, 85% the first year, 40% each year thereafter. So every year they have to produce a lot of shale just to maintain their legacy wells. They're losing, guys. And so all the while we have all this news about what OPEC is going to do, all this news about the banking crisis, the recession fears, the everything that's happening in the markets. China is in the background signing contracts, okay? And they're very intelligent. And so here's an article by Zero Hedge. 3 new China, Russia, Iran, and Iraq agreements confirmed the new oil market order, okay? Its key elements constitute a significant part of the new global oil market order, which is analyzed in depth in my new book. But the 3 most recent principal cooperation agreements will have immediate consequences for oil and gas flows around the world and their pricing, okay? So what it wants is to turn the Middle East into a large oil and gas station by which it can fuel economic growth to overtake the U.S. as the number 1 superpower by 2030. The 3 biggest oil and gas reserves in the region, belong to Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. So it wants to control those to begin with. For Russia, which already has lots of oil and gas, over which China already has significant control, the objective in the Middle East are more varied. One objective is to continue to exert influence in several countries that it regards as being key to maintaining some of its hold over the former Soviet Union states. Another more recent one is to use this influence to bolster its position as a partner of note to China. As for the other countries in this soap opera, Iran and Iraq, and now also, more clearly, Saudi Arabia, they are in this new global alliance partly for the economic and political support of China, and to a lesser degree, Russia, and because of their political systems are naturally much closer to the authoritarian regimes of China and Russia than they are to the democratic ones of the U.S. and its allies. So while everyone else is focusing on everything else, China's in the background signing contracts with the world's biggest oil producing country. Together, they control 40% of the oil, 40% of it. And see, China is very intelligent. They got ahead of the curve when it came to green energy. They happen to own second to America for all the patents for green energy. They own the largest cobalt mines in the world. I mean, they got ahead of the game. How did they know that was going to happen? And so look what China's doing. Why are they signing all of these oil contracts while America is trying to dump oil, while America is getting off oil, while China is selling this green energy technology to America? China is signing contracts with the largest oil producing countries in the world. You got to think about that for a second. What is China getting ahead of? What is China preparing? I'm telling you right now, China wants to be a superpower. They see the problems with America. When oil prices go up, it reduces the value of the currency, it causes inflation, and it causes all sorts of issues. So China is getting ahead of the game because they want to be a superpower. They want to control oil. And the greatest way to control America is control the most important resource in the world, and that is fossil fuels. That is oil. And so if China signs all these contracts, they control 40% of the oil to a degree. All they have to do is cut America off from this oil, and oil prices will go to levels we've never seen. And they will be the greatest authoritarian, the greatest superpower that is unmatched. Because at the end of the day, nuclear bombs cannot give you the power needed. Nuclear bombs, all it's going to do is reduce those, whatever countries enact with nuclear weapons, it's going to reduce both countries to ashes. Okay, and so the best way to wage war in 2023 is with economic warfare. It's controlling oil. Now, if you look here, last week, Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdul bin Salam told investors, he said, we're shortening the oil. So he's telling investors that we're shortening the oil price to watch out, which many market watchers interpreted as a warning of additional supply cuts. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Novak subsequently said he did not expect any new steps from OPEC Plus, and Vienna Russian media reported. Okay, and so there's an OPEC meeting coming up very soon. I believe it's in 2 days, June 4th. And so everyone is assuming that what the Saudi energy minister said to the investors that are shorting oil, hey, watch out. Because if you keep shorting oil, you're going to lose your butts. You need to go along with oil. You need to have more faith in oil. But these guys that are shorting oil, what he's saying is, hey, listen, you market manipulators, we're going to take the reins. We're tired of you controlling the oil markets. And we have a plan to come against your market manipulation, because all they can use is news. America cannot compete with Saudi oil. We can't compete with Russian oil. Why is Russia able to evade these major sanctions? Why is Saudi Arabia one of the richest countries in the world? Is because of oil, and they could produce it at a cheaper rate. Why is it that America has to still rely on Middle Eastern oil? because it's important. Now, here's what you need to understand about the Saudi energy minister Prince warning the short sellers of oil. I truly believe that people are assuming that they are going to do something with OPEC by reducing oil output, causing oil prices to go. Many people think that that was a hint that they were going to decrease output. I don't think that's the case. I don't think they're going to do anything. I think they're going to continue their plans with the past curbs and the past cuts and maybe solidify agreements and have a little more clarity. But I don't think there's going to be any change. I think they're talking about with what's happening with China. I think what's happening with Iran and Russia and what they are all planning to do. And it's going to be completely different. They are becoming a hub for the world's largest oil and gas export team. And it's all going to be controlled by China. And they're going to use their own currency. And they're going to cut America off from that system. And in order for America to benefit from their oil, they're going to have to play ball. They're going to have to come to the negotiating table. No different than what the left and the right do with this debt ceiling. It's like, look, if you do this, we'll do this, just to come to the bargaining table. And so it's going to force America to come to the bargaining table. It's going to force, because the world is tired of America controlling the rest of the world. They're tired of being sanctioned. They're tired of being controlled. They want freedom. If you reduce a country from being able to use the cheapest energy, you are preventing them from growing. We, America, had zero restrictions. We produced oil. We bought oil from Saudi Arabia and we made a deal with them. Hey, sell your oil in U.S. currency and sell your oil in U.S. currency to the rest of the world, and we'll protect your assets. We had more cheap, abundant oil than any other country, which is why we were able to build the most prosperous country in the world at such a record rapid price. That's why we had a baby boom back in the 1940s. That's why we have the richest country in the world. That's why we have the highest income per capita in the world, because of cheap, abundant energy. And America is trying to dictate cheap, abundant energy in Europe, in Africa, in Saudi Arabia, and all these other countries. And we use more oil per capita than, I think we're number 3 for the most energy usage per capita, is where there are countries out there, they use about as much energy as one of our refrigerators per family, where we have our media rooms, we have we commute to the office. Some people commute to the office 3 hours, 4 hours a day. We burn more energy than most countries. Because of cheap, abundant energy, we have grown. And we are determining and dictating other people's lives and how they live. We are such hypocrites. And so, but they're trying to put that burden on today's Americans. And so if you reduce the amount of oil, you are causing the cost of goods and services to go up. Everything is affected by oil. And the feds and the powers that be, they understand and they know this. And so their only option is to manipulate the markets. Well, let's have a debt ceiling issue. Let's have recession fears. Let's have a pandemic. Look, it's all to control. It's all to, if you have the power to send a message to the whole world and you are not an honest person and you only cared about your well-being and you didn't care about anyone else's, sure, that's the way this thing works. So don't believe what's happening in the markets. You need to think about, okay, what is the market going to buy today? What is the market going to believe today? I believe that the markets believe that we're not going to see much of a difference in OPEC. It's not going to cause oil prices to go up. It's not going to cause oil prices to go down. I believe the markets today believe that shale is going to increase output. I believe the markets today believe that we're not going to see much uptick in demand for oil. So I believe that oil prices are going to remain around the 70, 75, $80 level. And I believe that OPEC is going to come in. If we can't get oil prices over $80 a barrel this summer, I believe OPEC is going to come and reduce output. They're going to do whatever it takes to get oil prices above $80 a barrel. But if Russia doesn't play ball, if they continue to keep stealing Asian market share, Saudi Arabia has no choice but to keep output going so they don't lose. Because if Saudi Arabia curbs output, I mean, they curbed 500,000 barrels a day, Saudi Arabia alone, and oil prices went up, and then they dropped back down to pre-cut levels. How disappointing is that? You imagine reducing the amount of sprockets that you make to drive up sprocket prices, but then all of a sudden, it didn't even make a difference. And now you're making less money on less sprockets, all the while your competitors are stealing your buyers. And that's what Putin is doing. That's what Russia is doing. Saudi Arabia is pissed about it, but what are they going to do? I mean, Russia controls the Middle East for the most part. They could deter Iran from continuing to drop bombs on Saudi Arabia and Libya. I mean, it just takes one bomb on a drone with nuclear ability to take Saudi Arabia out. Well, the Saudi prince doesn't want to start a war with Putin. I mean, he doesn't want to jump in the mud with Putin. There's no way. He can't afford it right now. Right now, they are bleeding out, and they just want to focus on prosperity and developing their country, okay? And so so Saudi Arabia is on shaky ground with Putin, with Russia. Russia is at war with Ukraine. They're more interested in selling oil to fund their war in Ukraine than they are with living in the days of prosperity. Like Saudi Arabia, they're focused on greener pastures and peace, as where Putin is at war. In Iran, they're bloodthirsty. They want to go to war. They're at war with Israel. And so it wouldn't put it past Putin in Iran to come against Saudi Arabia and say, listen, you better play ball and you better tell the world this. And all the while, China is playing everybody. He's signing these massive contracts with the largest oil countries in the world before he increases his demand, because he wants to be a superpower by 2030. And then you got the West pushing the whole green energy, the whole woke agenda, the whole LBGTQ, whatever agenda. China is intelligent in this whole thing. They're the only intelligent ones. They're getting ahead of the game and they're buying oil. We should be doing the same. We should be sealing deals with Saudi Arabia and Russia and buying oil instead of trying to cut them out. The West is ignorant. So I'm telling you right now, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran, all these OPEC producing nations, countries that produce oil, they are tired of their oil being manipulated. The West is at fault for this. They're tired of the markets being undervalued. And I truly believe come end of possibly 2023, as demand increases, 2024, I believe at some point, we're going to get the rug ripped out from underneath us. And all of these woke agendas, all this green energy ambition, it's going to all come crumbling down. And after China signs all these deals, Russia's in on it. Of course, they want to cut us off from oil. Why would Saudi Arabia want to sell us oil when we are manipulating and controlling oil prices? And if they see that OPEC is making a difference by cutting and curbing production, but it's not making the difference it once did, because all the left has to do, all the West has to do is simply say, hey, let's push the recession fear. Where's the recession fear button? There it is. Boom. They press that button. And CNN and Fox News and all the majors are parakeeting the same thing over and over again. And that controls oil price. So it doesn't matter what OPEC does, because at the end of the day, they have the ear of the world. And in whatever they whisper in the ear of the world, they believe it, and the markets react to that. So I truly believe that we're going to see maybe 70, maybe $80 oil this year. And I think at some point, the fundamentals are going to break through the lies. At some point, you cannot continue to manipulate oil. And here's the deal. This next presidential election, they have to do whatever they're trying to get inflation back under control by lowering energy prices, by decreasing the amount of capital out there. And they're doing this by these federal interest rate hikes, but they're going to stop all of this market manipulation during the election, because if you have a bad economy during the election cycle, Trump's going to win. It's going to be, look at the economy. Look at the economy when I was in office. Look at the economy today. And Biden's going to come in and say, hey, look what we've done. We've reduced energy prices. We got inflation back under control. We took care of COVID. And look at the world, and so they're going to do whatever they can to get the markets back in line. And so what I'm saying is, I think they're going to reduce the amount of federal interest rate hikes. I think they're going to reduce rates to cause a spur in the U.S. economy. I think they're going to do whatever they can to the economy in order to win this next election. So come election time, I think we're going to see high oil prices. I think the markets are going to be doing very well. And I think they're going to use the news. The narrative is going to be, look at the markets, they're doing well. Look at the economy. Look at the stock market. Okay, all they have to do is push the narrative on the news. Then everyone starts buying and selling based upon a booming economy, and that's going to help them win this election. And so it's all being manipulated. Okay, all the while China has all these major contracts, and they want to control the West. And so that's the only thing that I see countering the explosive growth of America after they rip all the red tape, trying to win this next election cycle. And then I see oil prices going to levels, even in a bad economy, to $130, $140, $150 a barrel in the event that China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, everyone comes together to start cutting the West off. All right, guys, I'm Sean Pruitt, president of Kingdom Exploration. If you like this channel, please subscribe, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.